Welcome to the 2017 Test Administrator duties for during and after testing. To begin, the room should be ready for testing. For computer-based tests, the computer should be ready to go for the students when they arrive into the room. That means the computers are logged in and running. Students should not have to log in the computers or turn them on when they get to the room for testing that day. Also, for computer-based testing, specifically the ELA reading test, students need headphones or earbuds plugged in prior to launching the secure browser. As with both paper and computer-based tests, please make sure that anything that is on the walls that could give away answers to students is covered or taken down. Once all students are seated and ready to go, please begin by distributing materials. Please make sure that only the appropriate materials are handed out to students. Students will need a pencil for paper-based tests or a pen or pencil for computer-based tests so they can use their planning or work folders when they're taking their assessments. Please remember to read the script verbatim and distribute the test tickets or actual paper pencil tests when instructed to do so. During the script, students will be asked to acknowledge the testing rules acknowledgement. They will have to understand the testing rules, and they will have to note that they do understand that they should follow these rules or their test could be invalidated. It's important to read the script and make sure students are signing where they're supposed to sign. If a student chooses not to sign this, please contact your school assessment coordinator and also make note of it on the seating chart. It's important to know that students should still be able to take the test if they do not sign this. We just need to make sure that we document that the student chose not to sign it. The next three slides are for computer-based testing. Computer-based test administrators will have to create, start, monitor, and close the test session. A quick reference guide has been created for you and given to your school coordinator. Please make sure that you have that one-page document to use while viewing the next couple slides. To begin, you will have to create your test session and make sure that you have test tickets with the following information on them: the first name that appears in TIDE and the username provided in TIDE. To begin, you will have to create your session. To create the session, go to the portal and click Administer the FSA. Log in to the TA interface with your personal unique username and password. Select the test you will be administering, for example, Grade 9 FSA ELA Reading, and then click Start Operational Session. Record the session ID, which students will need to log into the test. This should be displayed either on the whiteboard or on chart paper visible enough for everybody in the room, and should be recorded with your required administration information and also on your seating chart. Start reading the script, and then as students are going through your directions in the script, they will begin to log into the test. Before they will actually test, however, you must approve them to test. So this happens in the TA interface. You're going to select the Approvals button, review the list of students ready to begin testing. If somebody's missing, you might want to refresh your screen to make sure everybody is there. Ensure that all students have logged in correctly, and then select Approve All Students. Read the information on the Important pop-up window and then select Yes. During paper and computer-based testing, test administrators are expected to monitor the test session. Your attention should not be diverted from students at any time during the test. You should be up and moving about the room for the entire test session. You should be monitoring students' progress by viewing the student status column in the TA interface for computer-based testing, or ensuring as you are walking around that students are in the correct section of their paper pencil test. If students have technical issues, please contact your school assessment coordinator or technology coordinator for assistance immediately. As a side note, test administrators will automatically be logged out of the TA interface after 90 minutes of test administrator and student inactivity. That means the students are not taking their test and you're not in the system monitoring it for an hour and a half. We have never run into this problem if it was something other than students and staff going to lunch and nobody shut the session down. At the conclusion of testing, you will have to either collect your paper pencil tests or stop the session within the computer-based testing interface. Please make sure that you follow the script in the manual for stopping time and collecting paper pencil tests and stopping the session within the computer-based test interface. It is very important to keep accurate time when administering a test session. Record starting and stopping times in places provided in the manual and also on your whiteboard in your classroom. It is very important that the students get the correct amount of time or their test may be invalidated. Students who get extended time should be allowed to get as much time as needed to finish the test as long as they are actively working. Also, ELA retake and EOC test sessions are provided up to a half of the length of a typical school day, or about 4 hours. Students are allowed to get this extended time, and it does not need to be as an accommodation, so these students do not need to have a 504 or IEP or ELL to get this time for the ELA retake or EOC test sessions. If during the test something happens and you have to stop the testing event, please record the time so that when testing does resume, you can restart and give students the appropriate amount of time for their test. Students, again, with IEPs, 504, or ELL plans may be provided additional time as written in their plan. They should get this time. If they do not get this time, then their test may be invalidated. Please be reminded that during this testing event, security must be maintained at all times. As you are well aware, test security is very important, and we want to make sure that if anything happens out of the ordinary, those are reported to your assessment coordinator at your school. Please make note of any odd occurrences on the seating chart, and also if anything looks out of the ordinary, please let your school coordinator know so that they can make the next determination whether or not it's something to call our office. It is better to be safe than sorry, because at the end of the day we do not want to lose any students' testing records. It's also important to maintain your record of required administration information, your security log, and seating charts throughout the duration of testing. During testing, if a student has to leave the session for a short break, for example going to the bathroom, they should either close their test booklet and leave it at their desk, or they need to visually block their computer screen. They can turn their monitor off or tape something to their screen so nobody can see their answers. If it is a longer break, then the test booklets need to be collected and the student should be paused so that nobody else could access their tests. Please be reminded that if a student leaves their test, that nobody else can see their items and their answers. The biggest role of a test administrator is to supervise the test administration. Therefore, again, your full attention should be on students at all times during the test, and a testing room must never be left unattended. There must be a test administrator in the room at all times. If issues arise during the test, you may need to use your computer or phone to contact the school assessment coordinator. However, also be reminded that it is not appropriate to use the computer or phone for unrelated activities such as grading or personal communication during a test. And never take pictures of test items. During the test administrator should be making sure that students have cleared their desks or workstations of all materials except for those mentioned in the manual. Also, students should not have books, notes, scratch paper, or anything else that could assist them during the test. Also, this is where you would again remind students that electronic devices of any kind during the test would be cause for an invalidation. Even if they do not use them, there is no battery in it, or it's broken. Please also make sure that students do not have a handheld calculator during session 1 of a mathematics or EOC assessment. And of course, at grades 3 through 6, no calculators are allowed. And finally, please make sure that students are not talking to each other or making any sort of disturbance. If you run into a situation where students continue to talk to each other, please move their seats and make note of it on the seating chart. Also, if a student is making any sort of disturbance, please make note of that on the seating chart and call the school coordinator. While students are taking the test, please make sure that students have signed the testing rules acknowledgement, that students are working independently, that students are working in the correct session, and that students who are using their planning sheets allow themselves enough time to enter their responses on the test, specifically for ELA writing. We've come into situations where students will write their entire piece in their work folders and then they will run out of time before they can get it into the actual test online or rewritten into the booklet for paper. As you are all aware, you should not be discussing test content with students during, before, or after a testing event. You can encourage students to continue working, but you may not talk to them about specific items or passages or help them with their responses in any way. That would be cause for an invalidation and also for an investigation. Any desktop viewing program or similar software should be turned off. This is not allowed during the test, and typically during a computer-based test it will knock students off their testing platform. If students do finish their test before the allotted time has elapsed, you are more than welcome and encouraged to have them go back and check their work. This does not mean to hover over them and make sure they're answering items correctly. And finally, you may not provide students with any information that would allow them to infer the correct answer, such as suggesting that they might want to check a specific item or they might want to look at a different distractor. It is very important to understand that you may not read or comment on student responses or help students plan on what to write or how to write to certain items. Further, you may not read planning sheets, worksheets, or work folders, or check through a test or answer booklets, not for stray marks, not to make sure somebody answered an item that you knew that they could do, return these to students after they have been collected, or discuss test content. Even after all test materials have been returned and testing has completed, you are not to discuss test items with students or other teachers. If you have a problem that you think that you saw something that could be right, wrong, or indifferent, please contact your assessment coordinator and they will provide you for next steps. For computer-based testing, if you run into any sort of technical issues, you will get an error message. You have been provided with a list of all of the error messages so that you know how to help triage the problem locally. If you do run into these problems, please contact your assessment coordinator so that it can be fixed immediately. If students have difficulty logging in or if they're really having some difficult time staying logged in, please contact your assessment coordinator, and it might be a situation where the student will test on a different day. Again, all of this information is available in the Test Administrator User Guide. Every year, students make comments that they think that an item has no correct answer, and that is okay. If a student thinks that an item is defective, just notate the student's name, grade level, subject, item number, and basic student concern. However, do not review the item on your own. Do not try to solve the item. Do not do anything with the item other than taking general information and providing it to your school coordinator. Most of these issues come from the student not reading the item carefully and perhaps not reading the instructions carefully. Have the student reread the item and instructions to make sure that what they're thinking is wrong is really wrong and it's not that it's a flawed item. The student should answer the item to the best of his or her ability and then continue with the test. Once testing has ended, that's when you will notify your school coordinator of the situation. Also, every year we have students who leave campus in the middle of an assessment. If a student leaves a test session during the middle of a test and they actually leave campus for a doctor's appointment, a dentist appointment, if they become ill, they will not be allowed to return to finish what they have started. Please remind students many times before the test event and also parents that if they pick up their child during the middle of a test, the testing event for that day has ended. Please remind students that while a test is actually in session, they are not permitted to write or use their computers or devices until everybody has finished their session. Everything has to be collected before students are allowed to write notes or use their computers or other electronic devices. And finally, please be reminded and also remind your students that test materials may not be returned to them once they have been collected. So if a student hands something in and then says, oh, but I really know what number 5 is now, you can't give them their test back. So they have to be sure that they're done, and this is typically why we tell students to keep their paper pencil tests on their desks until time is called. Once testing has concluded, please make sure you complete the following steps. Verify that you have collected all required administration information and make a copy for your files. Notify the coordinator immediately if you are missing anything. Ensure that accommodations provided to each student and the accommodations used by each student have been recorded with other required administration information. And also verify that your security log and seating charts have been completed correctly. And please make copies of these for your files as well. Finally, after you've done those steps, the final step is to return everything to your school assessment coordinator as applicable. The manual, security logs, seating charts, test tickets, required administration information, used and unused reference sheets, used and unused work folders, worksheets, or planning sheets, calculators, reading passage only booklets if applicable, writing passage only booklets if applicable, and test booklets for paper pencil testing. Finally, the last step after testing is to complete the comment form. It is located in the FSA portal, and it does provide meaningful feedback to the DOE and the test contractors, and they do use your opinions to make the testing event better. So I please urge you to do this. Thank you for ensuring a secure and successful test administration. Good luck and happy testing.